The year is 1916, and the trenches of the Western Front stretch across Europe in an unbroken line of mud, wire, and death. Machine guns dominate this landscape, their sustained fire creating killing zones that no infantry assault can cross without catastrophic casualties. The British Army has deployed the Vickers machine gun, a water-cooled, belt-fed weapon capable of sustained fire for hours at a time. But the Vickers weighs over 40 pounds without water or ammunition, requires a crew of 3 to 6 men to operate effectively, and cannot be moved quickly during fluid combat situations. What British forces need is something lighter, something more mobile, something that individual soldiers or small teams can carry and deploy without the logistical infrastructure that belt-fed machine guns demand. The answer is the Lewis gun, and its most distinctive feature is about to become even more distinctive. The Lewis gun, designed by American firearms inventor Isaac Newton Lewis and refined by British manufacturer BSA, is already in widespread service by 1916. It fires the standard British .303 cartridge from a top-mounted magazine that superficially resembles a flat disc or pan. The standard magazine holds 47 rounds arranged in a spiral pattern around a central spindle. 47 rounds represents a significant improvement over the 5 or 10-round magazines of standard infantry rifles, but at cyclic rates approaching 600 rounds per minute, even 47 rounds are exhausted in less than 5 seconds of continuous fire. In practice, gunners fire controlled bursts rather than sustained streams, but the tactical reality remains that frequent magazine changes interrupt fire and create vulnerable moments when the weapon is temporarily out of action. The solution that emerges is both mechanically ingenious and visually iconic. A larger version of the same pan magazine design, scaled up to hold 97 rounds in the standard infantry version and potentially 100 rounds in naval and aircraft variants with slightly different configurations. This enlarged magazine, which soldiers immediately begin calling the double drum or simply the 97-rounder, transforms the Lewis gun from a weapon with moderate sustained fire capability into one that can maintain fire for significantly longer periods. The implications for infantry tactics are substantial, but so are the challenges of actually employing this enlarged magazine under combat conditions. The Lewis gun's feeding system is unlike that of most other machine guns. Rather than pulling cartridges from a belt using the weapon's operating mechanism, the Lewis uses a pan magazine that rotates as rounds are fired. Inside the magazine, cartridges are arranged in a spiral track around a central post. A spring-driven mechanism provides the force that rotates the pan and positions cartridges for feeding. As the bolt cycles, it strips a cartridge from the magazine's feed position, chambers it, fires it, extracts the spent casing, ejects it, and then the magazine rotates slightly to position the next round. This process repeats with each shot, the magazine rotating incrementally until all rounds have been fed. The standard 47-round magazine is approximately 4 inches in diameter and less than 2 inches thick, a manageable size that does not interfere significantly with weapon handling or soldier movement. The 97-round magazine, by contrast, is substantially larger, measuring approximately 10 inches in diameter and over 2 inches thick. When mounted on top of the Lewis gun, this enlarged magazine sits prominently above the weapon like a massive disc, instantly recognizable and tactically significant. The visual profile of a Lewis gun with a 97-round magazine is unmistakable. No other weapon system of the period looks quite like it. Loading the 97-round magazine is a process that requires patience, practice, and no small amount of physical effort. The magazine separates into 2 halves, a front plate and a rear plate, with the internal spiral track mechanism between them. Cartridges must be inserted one at a time into the spiral track, starting from the outside and working inward, each round positioned precisely in its slot. The process is time-consuming, typically requiring 5 to 10 minutes to fully load a 97-round magazine, even for experienced loaders. Under ideal conditions, in a rear area or during preparation for planned operations, this time investment is manageable. Under fire, attempting to reload an empty pan magazine is essentially impossible. The practical reality is that pan magazines are loaded in advance, carried loaded, and when expended, they are either set aside for later reloading or simply abandoned if tactical circumstances require rapid movement. The weight of the loaded 97-round magazine is substantial. Each .303 cartridge weighs approximately 27 grams, just under 1 ounce. 97 rounds represent approximately 5.7 pounds of ammunition. Add the weight of the steel magazine body, the spring mechanism, and the feed mechanism, and a fully loaded 97-round pan magazine weighs close to 8 pounds. For comparison, the Lewis gun itself weighs approximately 28 pounds. Adding an 8-pound magazine brings the total system weight to 36 pounds, still lighter than a water-cooled Vickers with its tripod, water can, and ammunition belt, but substantially heavier than an infantry-armed rifleman's load. The spring mechanism inside the 97-round magazine is more complex and more highly stressed than the mechanism in the smaller 47-round version. The spring must store enough energy to rotate the magazine through its entire feeding cycle, positioning 97 cartridges sequentially over the course of firing. This requires a stronger spring wound to higher tension. Loading the magazine involves winding this spring using a key inserted into a socket on the magazine's exterior, a process similar to winding a mechanical clock, but requiring significantly more effort. The loader must turn the key multiple revolutions, feeling the resistance increase as the spring compresses until the mechanism is fully wound. An improperly wound magazine will fail to feed as rounds are fired, resulting in stoppages that require immediate remedial action under combat conditions. The tactical advantages of the 97-round magazine are immediately apparent to infantry commanders and soldiers in the field. A Lewis gun team equipped with the larger magazines can sustain fire for approximately 10 seconds of continuous firing, or more practically, can engage multiple targets with controlled bursts over an extended period without needing to change magazines. In defensive positions, this sustained fire capability allows Lewis gun teams to dominate areas of terrain, suppress enemy advances, and provide covering fire for friendly maneuvers. In offensive operations, Lewis gun teams can advance by bounds, one gun firing while another moves, with the 97-round capacity ensuring that covering fire does not lapse at critical moments. The Lewis gun with its 97-round magazine becomes particularly valuable in the fluid, chaotic combat that characterizes the final years of World War I. As tactics evolve beyond static trench warfare toward more mobile operations, the Lewis gun's combination of firepower and portability gives infantry squads organic automatic weapon support that does not require the extensive logistics of belt-fed machine guns. Small units can operate semi-independently, knowing that their Lewis gun provides the firepower needed to break up enemy counterattacks, suppress defending positions, and create opportunities for advance. But the enlarged magazine introduces complications that become apparent during actual combat employment. The increased diameter creates a larger visual profile, making the weapon more conspicuous. In an era when camouflage and concealment are essential to survival, a Lewis gun with its distinctive pan magazine already stands out. The 97-round version is even more visible, and enemy forces quickly learn to target Lewis gun teams because eliminating the automatic weapon significantly reduces a unit's firepower. British soldiers developed tactics to minimize this exposure, positioning Lewis guns in covered positions, using terrain and vegetation for concealment, changing firing positions frequently to avoid counterfire. The magazine's size also affects weapon handling. The standard Lewis gun with a 47-round magazine can be shouldered and fired from standing or kneeling positions, though it is heavy and firing from unsupported positions is tiring. The 97-round magazine adds weight high on the weapon, above the center of gravity, making the gun more top-heavy and more difficult to control when firing from anything other than a stable prone or supported position. The enlarged magazine interferes with sighting in some positions, requiring shooters to adjust their head position or cant the weapon slightly to achieve proper sight alignment. These are not insurmountable problems, but they require training and practice to overcome. The magazine's exposure above the weapon also makes it vulnerable to damage. A direct hit on the pan magazine from rifle fire or shrapnel can damage the feeding mechanism, dent the magazine body, or rupture cartridges, rendering the magazine inoperable and potentially causing a catastrophic failure if a damaged round is chambered and fired. British soldiers learned to be cautious about exposing their Lewis guns to direct fire, using firing positions that provide overhead cover when possible, and keeping spare magazines protected in carrying bags or sandbag enclosures. The spring mechanism inside the 97-round magazine is subject to reliability issues that do not affect simpler feeding systems. Springs can weaken over time, particularly if magazines are left loaded for extended periods. A weakened spring may not provide sufficient force to rotate the magazine through its complete feeding cycle, resulting in failures to feed that stop the weapon at the worst possible moments. British Ordnance Guidance recommends periodically unloading magazines and allowing springs to relax, but in frontline conditions where units maintain constant readiness, this guidance is often ignored. Magazines remain loaded for days or weeks, and spring fatigue becomes an accepted risk. The feeding mechanism is also sensitive to dirt, mud, and debris, substances that are ubiquitous in trench warfare. The magazine's rotation depends on precise interaction between the spring mechanism, the feed pawl, and the spiral track holding the cartridges. Mud or grit entering the mechanism can cause binding, uneven rotation, or complete failure to feed. The magazine's design includes some protection against contamination, but in the conditions of the Western Front, where soldiers and equipment are constantly covered in mud, keeping mechanisms clean is a constant challenge. Lewis gun crews develop elaborate procedures for protecting their magazines, wrapping them in cloth, storing them in waterproof bags, cleaning and inspecting them whenever circumstances allow. Despite these challenges, the 97-round magazine proves popular with British forces and is adopted widely across infantry units. The sustained fire capability is simply too valuable to forgo, and experienced Lewis gun crews learn to work around the magazine's limitations. The enlarged magazines are issued in increasing numbers through 1917 and 1918 as production capacity increases and the tactical value becomes apparent through combat experience. The Lewis gun, with its 97-round magazine, also finds extensive use in aircraft applications, where the weapon's air cooling system and magazine feeding make it well-suited for aerial combat. Aircraft-mounted Lewis guns often use the larger magazines because the weight penalty is less significant in an aircraft than for ground infantry, and the extended firing capability is valuable during aerial engagements where opportunities to reload are limited. Fighter pilots and observers appreciate the ability to fire extended bursts without needing to change magazines in the confined space of an aircraft cockpit or observer position. The distinctive silhouette of a Lewis gun with its large pan magazine becomes a common sight on British aircraft throughout the war. Naval applications also favor the larger capacity magazines. Ships employ Lewis guns for anti-aircraft defense, close-range defense against small boats, and as armament on small craft. Naval Lewis guns are often fitted with the largest capacity magazines available, sometimes designated as 100-round versions, with slight variations in internal configuration optimized for naval use. In maritime environments, the Lewis gun's air-cooled design is advantageous because it does not require water cooling systems that add weight and complexity. The large pan magazines allow sustained defensive fire without frequent reloading, which is particularly valuable when engaging fast-moving aerial targets or during boarding actions. The manufacture of the 97-round magazines is significantly more complex and expensive than producing the smaller 47-round versions. Each magazine requires precision machining of multiple components, careful assembly of the spring mechanism, and quality control testing to ensure reliable feeding. The larger diameter requires more material, more steel for the magazine body, longer springs for the drive mechanism, more precise tolerances to ensure the larger assembly rotates smoothly. Production costs for a 97-round magazine are approximately double those of the 47-round version, and manufacturing time is similarly increased. For British industry already stretched to capacity producing weapons, ammunition, and equipment for millions of soldiers, this additional cost and complexity represents a significant burden. The logistical implications of the larger magazines extend beyond manufacturing. Each magazine is a precision item that must be tracked, maintained, and recovered when possible. Unlike belted ammunition, where the belt can be discarded after use and cartridges can be loaded into fresh belts, pan magazines are reusable components that represent significant investment. British forces implement procedures for magazine recovery and redistribution, with empty magazines collected from forward positions returned to rear areas for cleaning and reloading, and then redistributed to units. This system works reasonably well in static defensive positions where logistics chains are established, but becomes problematic during mobile operations or retreats when equipment must be abandoned. Soldiers carrying Lewis guns with 97-round magazines develop various methods for transporting spare magazines. The magazines are too large to fit in standard ammunition pouches, so specialized carriers are designed, canvas bags with shoulder straps that can hold 2 or 3 magazines, leather cases with carrying handles, improvised harnesses fashioned from webbing and straps. A typical Lewis gun crew in offensive operations might carry the weapon with 1 magazine loaded and 2 or 3 spare magazines in carriers, representing approximately 300 to 400 rounds of immediate ammunition. Additional ammunition might be carried by supporting soldiers or brought forward by runners as the tactical situation allows. This ammunition load is substantial, but represents only a few minutes of sustained fire, highlighting the constant tension between firepower and ammunition supply that characterizes automatic weapons. The 97-round magazine's role in British infantry tactics becomes codified in training manuals and tactical doctrine. Infantry platoons are typically organized with 2 or 3 Lewis gun teams, each team consisting of a gunner, an assistant gunner who carries spare magazines and ammunition, and sometimes a third soldier assigned as security or additional ammunition bearer. The Lewis guns are positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire covering likely enemy approach routes. The gunners are trained in fire discipline, firing controlled bursts rather than sustained streams, conserving ammunition for critical moments, coordinating fire with other weapons in the platoon. Training emphasizes immediate action drills for magazine changes. When a magazine is exhausted, the gunner's assistant should already have a fresh magazine ready. The gunner tilts the weapon to the side, releases the empty magazine, which slides off the mounting post, positions the fresh magazine on the post, ensures it is properly seated, and resumes firing. In training, experienced crews can execute this magazine change in 5 to 10 seconds. Under fire, with stress and adrenaline and possibly enemy suppression making fine motor skills difficult, magazine changes take longer and are more prone to errors. Dropped magazines, magazines that fail to seat properly, magazines damaged during handling, all of these issues occur regularly in combat and must be anticipated in training. The psychological impact of the Lewis gun with its large pan magazine should not be underestimated. For British soldiers, the presence of Lewis guns in their unit provides confidence that they possess firepower capable of matching enemy machine guns. The distinctive appearance of the weapon, particularly with the large 97-round magazine, is reassuring, a visible symbol of technological advantage and firepower superiority. For German soldiers facing British attacks, the Lewis gun's distinctive sound, a rapid hammering that differs from the sound of belt-fed weapons, becomes associated with British offensive action. The sight of soldiers advancing with Lewis guns signals the presence of automatic weapons that can suppress defensive positions and support assault troops. The Lewis gun and its magazines become subjects of continuous refinement throughout the war years. Modifications are made to improve reliability, reduce weight, simplify manufacturing, and address issues identified through combat experience. The magazine design sees multiple iterations, with changes to spring materials, improvements to the feed mechanism, refinements to the magazine body construction. These changes are generally evolutionary rather than revolutionary, incremental improvements that marginally enhance performance or reliability without fundamentally altering the basic design. The end of World War I in November 1918 does not end the Lewis gun's service life or the use of the 97-round magazine. The weapon remains in British service through the interwar period and into World War II, employed in various roles ranging from infantry support to anti-aircraft defense. The large-capacity magazines remain standard issue, valued for the same reasons they were valued during World War I, sustained fire capability without frequent reloading. British forces carry Lewis guns into action during the early years of World War II, though by this time the weapon is increasingly obsolescent compared to more modern designs. The Lewis gun with its distinctive pan magazine appears in conflicts around the world during the 1920s and 1930s. British colonial forces employ the weapon in various small wars and pacification campaigns. Other nations purchase or license-produce Lewis guns for their own forces. The weapon sees service in the Irish War of Independence, the Russian Civil War, the Chinese Civil War, and numerous other conflicts. In each case, the 97-round magazine remains a standard component, chosen whenever sustained fire capability is valued over the weight and handling compromises. Aircraft applications continue through the interwar period, though the Lewis gun eventually gives way to belt-fed weapons that offer even greater ammunition capacity and higher rates of fire. The air-cooled design that made the Lewis attractive for aircraft use is superseded by purpose-designed aviation machine guns with improved performance. But during the 1920s and into the 1930s, Lewis guns with large pan magazines remained common armament on military and even some civilian aircraft. The magazine's distinctive appearance makes it one of the most recognizable features of any World War I weapon. Photographs from the period invariably show the large disc sitting atop the Lewis gun, immediately identifying the weapon even when other details are unclear. Artists depicting World War I combat include the Lewis gun and its pan magazine as visual shorthand for automatic weapons and modern industrial warfare. The image becomes iconic, representing not just a specific weapon, but an entire era of military technology. Modern collectors and military historians maintain particular interest in Lewis guns and their magazines. Original 97-round magazines are relatively scarce because many were damaged during use, discarded during retreats or advances, or scrapped during post-war demilitarization. Surviving examples in good condition are valued both as functional components for those who maintain operational Lewis guns and as historical artifacts representing World War I technology. The complexity of the magazine's internal mechanism means that restoration and maintenance require specialized knowledge and skills. The engineering represented in the 97-round Pan magazine is impressive even by modern standards, creating a spring-driven rotary feeding mechanism that reliably positions 97 cartridges sequentially, that can function when dirty or partially damaged, that can be manufactured in wartime factories with available materials and workforce skills. This represents significant achievement in mechanical design. The fact that these magazines continue to function reliably more than a century after their manufacture testifies to the quality of the engineering and manufacturing. The tactical doctrine that evolved around the Lewis gun and its magazines influenced thinking about infantry firepower that extends well beyond World War I. The concept of organic squad or platoon automatic weapons, weapons that belong to infantry units rather than being concentrated in separate machine gun companies, becomes standard practice in most military forces. The balance between ammunition capacity, weapon weight, and tactical mobility that the Lewis gun represented continues to be the fundamental challenge in light machine gun design. Modern infantry automatic weapons still grapple with these same trade-offs, seeking optimal combinations of sustained fire capability and soldier portability. The 97-round magazine represents a specific solution to these challenges, optimized for the technology and tactical requirements of its era. It was not perfect, too heavy, too bulky, too complex, too prone to reliability issues in adverse conditions, but it provided British infantry with capabilities they desperately needed during a period when automatic weapons meant the difference between successful operations and catastrophic casualties. For soldiers who carried Lewis guns during World War I, the large Pan magazine was simply part of the weapon system, accepted along with all its advantages and limitations. The visual impact of the Lewis gun with its 97-round magazine cannot be overstated. In an era when most weapons were relatively similar in appearance, variations on the theme of a wooden stock and a metal barrel, the Lewis gun stood out dramatically. The large disc sitting prominently atop the weapon, the distinctive cooling shroud around the barrel, the overall mechanical appearance that suggested industrial sophistication, all of these features made the Lewis gun look modern, powerful, and technologically advanced.